Hi, I'm Casey Bell, and you're watching Writer to Writer Interviews. Hi, this is another episode of Writer to Writer Interviews. I'm your host, Casey Bell, and today's guest authors are Stephen Murray and Stenetta Anthony. Stenetta Anthony is a children's book writer, and Stephen Murray is a multi-genre. He does crime, murder, mystery, and romance. Let's take a listen at our interviews right now.
Good morning, Stenetta and Casey, and thank you, Casey, for organizing this rendezvous with Stenetta Anthony here. And Stenetta, my first question for you. Your book, A Home for Sally, is a terrific child's novel about a dog with a disability who wonders if she will ever find a wonderful, caring home. Stenetta, what inspired you to write this truly magnificent story?
Well, Stephen, it was kind of twofold. One is I would watch, I guess like a lot of people, Saturday morning television where they would feature different dogs that were up for adoption. And one of the things that I observed was I've never seen any canines with a disability. And I understand completely, of course, you want to put your best foot forward, but I always wondered who's adopting them and what's happening with them. And so that was something I had been churning in my heart for a number of years. And the second fold is I used to be an educator. And one group of students that I taught was students who were special education students. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to write something that address them as well, that they can relate to, and not just them, but other children as well, to have them to have a sympathetic heart and ear to someone who looks different from them.
Wow, that's cool. You're truly to be commended for that, Stenetta. That's truly cool. Clearly, it's a children's book, and children cover obviously a wide range. What age group is your book marketed towards?
Okay, so A Home for Sally is marketed for children 5 to 10 years old.
Okay, boy, that's a very impressionable age. What is it that you hope the readers will take away from your book? What would you like them to take away the most?
The most that I would like for them to take away is to have empathy for someone who looks a little different from them. And the other thing is to adoption. You know, take into consideration when you're adopting a pet. I found out after writing the book that I believe it's the older and canines with disability are the second to third to be adopted. And so they're waiting 2 times, maybe 3 times more to be adopted. And that could be a year, 2 years, 3 years, or even longer, or if they come to the point of being euthanized. So we want to bring attention to that.
That's amazing. So your book's entertaining, it's educational and informative, and sounds like you struck all 3 chords there. That's terrific. It sounds like it could be a wonderful base for a series of books. Do you plan on there being more books in this series?
I'm thinking about it. Sally hasn't decided yet. So she's still deciding. So we haven't decided yet. I've worked on a few things and it hasn't had the feel for me yet. You know, I've tried to do a couple of things that I just haven't had the feel for it yet. And so I believe at some point maybe, but just not right now.
I would suspect that the more your book gets out there, the more your book gets known, the readers will tell you that they want more of Sally or Sally's encounters with other dogs. And your readers always tell you what they want from you. So
yes, they do. They do.
Yeah, well, congratulations on this book. And I see you've written a book of couple of books in different genres as well. Where do you see your future as an author? Which direction or which journey path do you see yourself going? Is there anything in the works right now?
It is, my heart is with children. I do like to expand myself and go in different genres, but my heart is with the children. So I may do a couple of things. I'm working on something now that's not geared toward children, but even with that, I still go back to writing for children because that's my base.
Well, you're certainly making a difference out there, and I commend you for that. And congratulations on the success of A Home for Sally and continued success with your other books.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Don't you dare go anywhere. We are just getting started. We are back for more enticing interview. Let's continue.
All right, Casey and Stephen, how are you today?
Just peachy, thank you.
Okay, so I have a couple of questions for you. So one is, I know you're a multi-talented writer, and could you give us a little synopsis of what type of books you write and why?
Well, I came to writing a little bit late in life, Stenetta, and I do it as a hobby. It's not a career for me, it's a hobby. And I originally wrote a biography on my travels throughout the world, which have been extensive. And through that, I discovered a joy of writing. And I went to get the biography published, and I was told, those kind of things don't sell. You've got to write for women and women's fiction. And I knew nothing about women's fiction, but I wanted to give it a stab because I had this joy of writing. So I stumbled around and came up with writing a book about Las Vegas wedding chapel. I mean, we are the marriage capital of the world after all. And I thought, that could be a fun book. Why do couples come and get married here in Las Vegas? What's the reason for it? And I came up with all these little stories in my mind, and I started off with that, and when I finished, I thought, well, that was fun to write, and I just put it away and shelved it in the computer, and I wanted to write a murder mystery then, and I thought, let me write this murder mystery. And when I finished that, I took that to be published, and I was told, oh no, if you've got a book about Las Vegas wedding chapel, you've got to get that one out there. Forget about the murder mystery. So I was hesitant. But I thought, hey, let me go with the chapel. If that's what the experts say, who am I to question? So that's how the Chapel of Eternal Love came out. And as I said, your readers will tell you what they want to hear. And it even spawned a sequel. People wanted to know what happened to the couples after they left the chapel. So I wrote a sequel 5 years down the road as to where those couples' journeys had taken them. And that was fun. And then I did go and get my murder mystery published, Murder Aboard the Queen Elizabeth II. And then I decided to write a crime fiction. And that was inspired because in the chapel book, one of the stories is a lady who runs an escort agency, and she gets stood up at the altar. She makes the mistake of falling in love with one of her clients, and she puts her life on hold for years and years and years. And eventually he agrees to get married, and they go to get married, and he gets cold feet and leaves her at the altar. And so many letters I got from females saying, what happened to her? What happened to her? She got stood up. well, she's only fiction anyway. But I thought I want to take that one step further and write a book, crime fiction, where 3 escorts work for an escort agency, an exclusive one, and the guy that runs it treats them like dirt, and they come up with a plot to kill him. So we all know he's going to get murdered. The crime and the fiction, the mystery is, do they get away with it? So, that's how the 4 different books came into being, all from different routes, if you will.
Okay, I'm going to speak as a woman. That does speak to me. All of that speaks to me. I do love mysteries. I do love romance. So thank you for that. Now, another question. Are any of the characters in your book based on real people?
No, Stenetta, they're not. They're all 100% figments of my imagination.
Okay.
And I deliberately did it like that because when I first started certainly the crime fiction one, I was coming up with the 3 characters. And I was thinking of actresses, if you will, who would play the roles if there was a movie. And
Okay.
I found I was trying to tailor the role to my perception of what those people are like in real life. So I thought, no, I've got to totally scratch that idea and just make these women totally figments of my imagination. And it's not easy, you know, certainly for man writing for women, it might be easy for some male authors, but it certainly isn't easy for me. It's a challenge, but it's fun.
Okay, okay. Now, have you ever thought about writing under the pseudonym, or are you just going to keep your name, or have you
Stephen
thought
Murray
about
is
that?
my pseudonym.
Oh, is it?
Yes, that's not my real name. And Murray's actually my middle name. And
Okay.
it's just easier than my real last name to pronounce. And it gets
Okay.
mispronounced all the time. Just in regular life, it gets mispronounced. I thought, well,
Okay, so that's why you chose to go that way.
yeah, cut off the last name and just drop it.
Okay, now writer to writer, has there been any challenges with you writing at all? You know, you get writer's block or?
No, I don't get writer's block. Writing is a challenge for me anyway, but it's fun. I think it's fun because the whole concept is a challenge. It just is. Pulling the characters together, pulling the books together, getting the words out, getting the right words out, that's a challenge in and of itself. Fortunately, I happen to be in a writer's critique group with three other ladies, and we meet every 2 weeks, and we each bring something that we've written. So we've been together for years, and they've been with me through all of these books from start to finish, and their perspective has been great. And a lot of times I've had to go back to the drawing board because I'm seeing things from a male perspective, and they're saying, no, this isn't how women think. And men and women, they are wired differently. Nothing wrong with either wiring, but we are wired differently. I've certainly learned that.
Yes. Okay, and do you have anything else on the horizon?
Yes, I am writing, believe it or not now, I'm writing a nice, fun Christmas story. It's very much a Hallmark kind of story. It's just one of those nice, mushy kind of stories.
Okay.
And all my books anyway, they're all very clean and very pure. There's no graphic sex and there's no expletives. So your grandmother could read any one of them, even the one about the Discreetly Yours, about the escort agency. Your grandmother could read it and there would be nothing offensive in it. But the Christmas one's just a nice, wholesome book. I'm not too far into it. I started it a year ago, but life's kind of gotten in the way this year and haven't found time to write, despite us all being confined to our homes. But it'll get there. It'll get there.
Can they mastermind the perfect crime? Frankie had it coming. As owner of the most exclusive escort agency in Las Vegas, He had crossed the line more than once with his babes. But this time was the last time, especially for Satin, Ruby, and Goldie, a team. Could they mastermind the perfect crime to get rid of Frankie? Could it be considered justifiable homicide if they were caught? Or could they actually get away with murder? They were never his to begin with, but if Frankie was out of the picture, they could be discreetly yours.
Well, the first question I'd like to ask, as you just said, I am a self-published author, and a lot of people come to me and ask me to help them. And I used to actually have a publishing company, but I ceased it because I couldn't really, I didn't have the resources to do it the right way. So when people come to me, I want to give them, I don't just want to Google publishing companies and give them a bunch. I want to give them companies I know people have actually used and didn't have any horror stories. So what companies did you guys use to publish your books?
Okay, so I can answer that. I've actually, because like Stephen, I came into writing mature in my later 40s. And so I didn't know anything about anything. And so my first publisher was Tate Publishing. And it started off well. For the first couple of years, we were chugging along. And then some things arose that wasn't, I don't want to go into all of the details, but some things arose. And so not just me, but other authors, they had to close down. They had to close down. And at the time, A Home for Sally was on the table. And so, and then my other book was on the table, being published through them as well. And so I had to figure out what to do next. And so as a writer, if something happens, you have to decide, I'm gonna just let everything go, or I'm gonna proceed. And so with my first book, because the publisher went out of business, I had to end up self-publishing it myself, which it wasn't too bad because everything was already in place. The writing was in place, the illustrations were in place, but I had to release it myself. But it was still a challenge because I didn't know, what to do and how to do it and things like that. And then I had to, with A Home for Sally, I had to begin to look for another home for her. And that taken almost a year and a half. And it was something. It was an interesting process. So I learned not just the writing part of being a writer and an author, but I had to learn the business part of being a writer, which is essential to being an author. And we have to, as writers, you must consider that part. You cannot let that part just be swept under the rug or push it aside. You have to encompass all of it. So,
what company are you with now?
The funny part, I'm gonna say the funny part about this is that I'm with Covenant Books, and it was an employee that used to be with Tate, and my book came across her desk, and she actually called me on a Sunday afternoon, and she said, what was the likelihood of another Stenetta Anthony that was a writer coming across her desk? And so I went with them, and insisted. She is actually retired, but it just happened.
And Stephen?
Actually, I self-published all 4 of mine just when I was going to as I said, I was told about the chapel book, To Write for Women, that I was at a critique, at a writers group that meets in Las Vegas, and the guest speaker that night happened to be a publisher, so I took what she said as gospel. And when I finally got round to getting my murder mystery ready, one of the ladies in my critique group knows this company that they help authors. They help them with the cover design, with the editing and the layout and all of that kind of stuff. And when I met the owner of that company, he said, by going with a traditional publisher, even once you find one, it could take up to 3 years before your book even sees the light of day in a bookstore. And my reaction was, gosh, I could be dead in those 3 years. And if I want this to happen, I want it to happen now. And of course it's expensive, but I've discovered that I think there's so much more control when you self-publish. Yes, you've got the cost of the editing and the cover design, and you've got the cost of maintaining the website and all of that stuff. And it can be very expensive, but at least I control everything. And I'm hoping that certainly the chapel books will eventually be made into a TV miniseries, and I own all the rights to everything. I have the final say, and I'm prepared to pay out that money up front for being able to maintain that control. And like you guys, I've heard too many horror stories about some of these smaller publishing companies that either go belly up or that they take the authors for a ride, because I think authors, most of them, they're green when they go into writing a book and publishing it. I didn't know squat about publishing, how to go about it or what to do. I didn't know what a query letter was. And I think a lot of authors are taken for a ride. I hate to say it, but I think it's just true. You just hear too many horror stories.
Well, Stenetta, you're the second author that I've interviewed who was with Tate.
Yeah.
So I do know about Tate, and I was actually, prior to everything happening, I was approached by Tate to publish with them. But at the time, I think I had 3 books already that was already published, and I had nothing new in my mind at the time. So I put them on the side thinking, if I write something, I'll contact them. But it never happened. And I do remember them going out of business and everything, but I didn't know the details until.
But yeah, I just don't want to. I mean, if you Google it, you can find out the details of why. I'm just not going to say why.
No, I know why, because the other author told me.
Okay, yeah, so.
Yeah, they told me, but that's why I asked, because they're not the only ones, though. There's about 4 of them I've heard of that basically do the same thing. And so that's why I ask authors, who did you publish with? Because I don't want to be the one to give someone a publishing company and it's a bad one, that they're going to come to me. Like, what did you do? It's like, I didn't know. So I want to ask, because I just don't, until I get the resources to have a real publishing company, I don't want to publish people's books, because it's just, I don't want them to be disappointed, because I can't give them what a publishing company can give them.
Yeah, I mean, they were fine at first. It was just down the road, you know? It was okay at first. You know, I can't say about my first experience. My first year, 2 with them was fine. It was just further down the road that it's like, okay, what's going on here?
Yeah. So last question, this is a little thinker. If you could sit down and have lunch with an author, they can be either dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Stenetta, would you like to go first on that?
No.
Ladies first?
I'm thinking. Oh gosh.
Well, while you're thinking, I'll give you my answer.
Okay.
Charles Dickens. And it's not because he happens to be born in the same town as I was, but I just find his characters and his stories, I mean, he was so prolific during his time, and all of his characters are just so amazing, and they're all so colorful. And you just think of names like Ebenezer Scrooge. I mean, he just sounds, just a mere name, sounds nefarious and mean-spirited. And think of the Artful Dodger, you know, and Oliver Twist, and Fagin. You know, Fagin, he just sounds a real character. And I just find his stories amazing, and his characters so very colorful. Just love the characters.
Okay, so I guess with me, it would be Stephen King.
Ah.
Okay.
Like the horror stuff, huh?
Even though I don't like horror, personally, I don't like horror pictures. I cover my eyes and all of that. But I would like to know what goes through his mind when he's writing about the glorious details. Just wonder, okay, what are you thinking? I mean, how are you feeling? Not just what are you thinking, how are you feeling when you're writing these horrific things that are coming to life, not just in books, but in movies and TV and everything like that. So I think I would want to know his mind.
Well, be careful on that. You probably really don't.
I may not, but I want to know what his train of thought is that he's thinking about when he's writing.
Right.
Yeah, sure. What's yours, Casey? Let's ask you.
An author that I would, you know, I ask this question a lot, and I don't know. Agatha Christie.
Oh, okay.
I would do Agatha Christie because I am a huge fan of whodunit, and I've never been able, well, I don't want to say never, but usually I can't figure out whodunit, whether I'm watching television, a film, or reading a book. But I've always enjoyed her way of how she brings everything together.
Yes.
Or she writes like 5 different stories, and then at the end they all come together, and you kind of go, oh, okay, now everything makes sense. And so I just wanted, if I could, just tell her again, what was she thinking, and why did she choose? Because like again, there's so many different genres, and then there are people who do multiple genre, but I would like to know why she chooses mystery.
Yes.
Okay.
And so that would be my choice.
Well, she disappeared herself for a number of years, didn't she? Which was a mystery as to where she went and why. So her own life is something of a mystery in and of itself, isn't it? No. Yes.
Yes.
Her books and even the movies, you're absolutely right. You can't guess until the very end. And then the murder, the cause or the reason for it is so far out in left field, you would never have guessed it in a million years. You know, most of those movies and stories. It's very gifted. Very gifted.
And if you like mysteries, I do like mysteries. And so if you like mysteries, Casey, that's a good pick. Because I like to know, I like to read it, but I don't like to know what the end is. I want to go through the entire story, enjoy the entire story, become engrossed in the entire story. That's how I am when I'm reading. And I don't want to know the end. I don't want to say, oh, okay, that's the ending. And then I feel like, okay, now I've read the whole book at page number 37. You know? And I have 200 more pages to go. So I like to keep the suspense going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Cool.
Well, it has to be a page turner. If it's going to be a mystery book, it has to be a page turner, something that even if you think you know who's done it, but you're not sure, you still want to keep turning those pages to look for more clues to reinforce your thought. And and so often in a good murder mystery, where you think you've figured it out, something will come along in the next 20 pages and you think, well, there goes my theory, you know, that's blown out the window right there. So
Okay. Now, I have a question for both of you all. So, since both of you all are self-publishers, is there any advice that you would give to someone who's considering self-publishing?
I would say research marketing and advertising before you even write the book. Because for me, well, I guess now that I've been doing it for so long, the writing and publishing process is easy. It's the marketing that's very difficult. Because now that there is such a thing as self-publishing, you can estimate there are probably 2 books being published every hour. So the thing is, how do you get, because there are people who can read 5 books in a day, but then there's people who can only read 1 book in a year. So now you have to see, how do I get people to choose my book over others? And it takes a lot of learning and a lot of, I wouldn't say competition, but you have to learn the marketing and advertising. I would say learn that first, learn the difference between publicity, advertising, and marketing. Understand that even if you pay for someone to do that for you, they're still going to want you to help. That you don't get to sit back and do nothing. There is work for you to do. And then after you learn it, then start writing the book. Because it doesn't make sense to publish a book and not know that you're going to have to do most of the work, really, in marketing it.
Okay.
And I would add to that, I don't disagree with much of what Casey says. One thing I would emphasize to any self-published author, there is a lot of outgo of money up front. It's unavoidable. Don't try and skimp on the editing. Above all, do not skimp on the editing. Don't shop around and say, oh, well, I found somebody who will edit my book for $100, because you're going to get $100 worth of editing. And it's so important to have a book well edited. I didn't realize the importance of it until I took my first one to be edited. And for as many times as we read it ourselves, and you can't say, well, my wife's an English teacher, so she's going to be editing my book. Just because she teaches English doesn't necessarily mean to say she can edit books. It's a whole different kettle of fish and a whole different ballgame. So I would really emphasize that do not skimp on the editing aspect of your book. And the other bit of advice I would say to self-published authors is go for it, because the journey is well worth it. Yes, the marketing, as Casey rightly points out, is tough. It's not easy because you've got nobody behind you. You've got to go out, you've got to organize your own book signings, you've got to go out and find your own podcast interviews and things like that. Find out the niche for what your book genre is. Like you, Stenetta, if you were self-published, go to local pet stores. See if they will sign you up for a book signing. Think outside the box. Don't just think of Barnes & Noble for book signings. Think of other places. Think of adoption societies. See if you could go and promote your books there. So whatever your genre is, think outside the box. And I think more fun for me than the actual writing has been the marketing. The journey of the marketing has been a sheer joy. I've met a lot of other authors. I've met a lot of fun, interesting people that come and talk at book signings. It's just been a great experience. And I would say, go for it, take the plunge, and you won't look back. Do it right, and it'll be a load of fun. It'll add a whole different dimension to your life.
Oh, thank you all for that advice. And you know what, I'm just going to add on a little bit that even though I'm not self-published, I still have to do a lot of the marketing myself. A whole lot. And so that does not go unwarranted, that even though you have a publisher, that they're going to do all the work. You have to do some work too.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, like I said, even if you hire a publicity team, you still have to do work.
Yeah.
Like before they agree to do anything with you, they want to know what you're going to do to help. So.
Yeah, and the other one thing too that I would strongly recommend is make sure you go and register your book with the Library of Congress, have it copywritten, because I believe a couple of years ago, the Supreme Court ruled that unless your book is copyrighted, they will not hear any cases. Because if you say that somebody stole my book or the concept of my book, unless you've actually copywritten it, they're not going to hear any cases. So it's very important that you get your book copyrighted so that somebody doesn't steal what's rightfully yours. Make sure you do that. It's very easy to do. You just got to go to the Library of Congress, and you send them a copy of the book, and it's like $50 or something. I can't remember the exact amount, but it's just nice to know that your book will be protected, your creativity.
I agree wholeheartedly with that. Wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
All right. That is all the time we have today for Writer to Writer interviews. Thank you for watching, and of course we want to thank Stenetta Anthony and Stephen Murray for their time and for sharing. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.